Hey, everybody, I'm back. We're back. Eric, Tom, Madeline, we're all back on the Newcomer Podcast.
I've been here.
Yeah. So the show that you may have liked or may not have liked is now returned. Listen, I think we got a lot to go through. It's been a lot happening in AI. And I understand this is not the Cerebral Valley podcast specifically, but money is flying. Money is flying here in tech. If you are an AI researcher, you should be making at least 8 figures. You should probably start claiming that you're an AI researcher to just see like what the offers look like. Where do we even start?
Yeah, Madeline, you want to give us a rundown? I mean, you've been digging into. I feel like there are tables on tables of different Meta employees making a bunch of money. We've tried to make the table to end all tables, just pulling them all together. What's your read right now on Mark Zuckerberg's recruiting frenzy spending bonanza here?
Right. Well, 8-figure comp packages from Zuckerberg are the entry level. Some people are getting, 9-figure comp packages out of this hiring spree. But it really kicked off in earnest last month with Meta's acqui-hire of Alexander Wang from Scale AI to lead the new Meta Superintelligence Lab team within the company. Meta paid over $14 billion for a 49% stake in Scale just to get Alex over onto the team. But since then, he's also poached Nat Friedman and Daniel Gross there and is, buying out a stake in their investment fund to have them come work for the lab. So really just unprecedented amounts of capital wrangling to get the biggest names in AI to lead the team.
And they've got, obviously they've been picking OpenAI's pocket. They've got more than a half dozen people from OpenAI. They've got people from DeepMind, Anthropic, Apple.
As of this week, as of Thursday recording, they've poached at least 10 people from OpenAI to join this team, in addition to those other big names.
As a side point to all of this, I mean, a lot of the narrative really kicked off, when, like you said, the Scale deal happened. But then Sam, I thought really unstrategically goes on, I think his brother's podcast. And he's just like, yeah, they're coming at us, but they haven't gotten anyone good yet, which is a stupid thing to say.
He's just like egging them on
all fronts. We have clearly Zuck, one of the most psychotically competitive people in the history of civilization, saying like you can't get our people is like just red meat for him. But also like you're basically saying everyone that they did get was shitty, and they did end up getting shitty people. And like I understand, like Sam is still figuring out how to like measure his like I'm a deep thinking AI guy and I'm very calm with the fact that he also is psychotically competitive and doesn't like the fact that Zuck is coming at
balance the philosopher king posture with the cutthroat business leader of our AI future.
One could also say missionary versus mercenary in that dichotomy there.
It's not just OpenAI, to be clear. They've poached a lot of DeepMind researchers, and then Roming Peng from Apple, Bloomberg is now reporting that they have poached with a $200 million over 4 years total comp package. So these are serious offers just from across the table of AI research.
People should be cheering for this. This is my first take. I think, gone are the old days when Apple and Google had anti-competitive alliances to artificially repress salaries. I mean, this is the working class. These are workers getting paid a lot of money for producing. Or Tom, I'm curious what you take that. Like, it's like,
yeah, this is ultimately the proletariat winning here in this moment.
Yeah, sure. The white collar proletariat, that they're all basically creating technology that will one day make white collar jobs no longer viable.
Yeah, you're right. There's a certain logic. If you're the last man to ever work, it's like, you
take the money
get paid
now.
A lot. Like,
right. Like this is generational wealth because your children, if they're also white collar workers, will never have jobs. Yeah, I don't know. I guess like we've been following the kind of turmoil at Meta on their AI team for as long as I've been with you guys. I think it was like the first story I wrote at Newcomer was like, man, Llama is sucking right now. Like they just have not done a good job keeping up, and DeepSeek I think really fucked things up for them. And so at some point, and there were some good stories in the New York Times and elsewhere about kind of like internally at Meta what's been going on. But Zuck just realized like either if we're going to be playing at this, we need to use the only asset that we really have here right now, which is like endless deep pockets. It's just money. Yeah. And that's always kind of been Zuck's thing, right? Like the ideas side of him is not always sharp.
He has money and he has network effects. Where he has a lot of users.
Yeah. So like Facebook is, not growing at all almost. And so you buy Instagram and you get WhatsApp. You basically just buy your way into like continued relevance as a company. And like there's no specific company to buy really in AI that's going to make you top tier. So just get the research because it's really just talent.
Well, there's a very, very limited pool of researchers that can be building these models at this scale. So it is really like a small pool of people that can be bid on at these super high comp packages. Like there is just a limited pool of worker resources to go around.
You guys are a little deeper in it than I am, but I have to imagine OpenAI's weird shareholder structure is not helping it retain these employees. Like, first of all, you have this question mark around what these shares really mean and how the company sort of sorts out. Whereas at Meta, you're getting public shares, what they're worth. And then there have been all these secondaries that allowed OpenAI people to get liquidity. And so it's like, oh, I've already gotten paid out from you. I can go on to the next thing. Or what's your read on how OpenAI set this thing up?
Yeah, I think, this brings back to like Sam's, hubristic comment about you can't poach from us. OpenAI has been losing people constantly over its life as a company. This is not like a company full of lifers. There are some.
Anthropic exists as a defection from OpenAI.
Yeah. The story of OpenAI is a story of people leaving OpenAI, basically.
Right.
like Elon, Dario, Mira, Ilya. It's an endless list of alumni that come there. So this idea that these guys are like all missionaries who want to stay there for life is just not true. And it's
I think the sympathetic argument is that they're missionaries and that they want to be there when AGI is born. I think a lot of them do want to be in the place where it's born. And if you can convince them like, hey, our superstar team is moving from this place to this place, you'll have another shot at it. Or you think this is about money and not about being the father of AGI?
Yeah, well, I also in reporting out that piece that I did a couple weeks ago about basically all of this and Meta's recruitment, I was really struck by one researcher I talked to who was like, basically creating an AI model is a recipe. And there are certain people who have the recipe in their brain. And what you're paying for when you poach someone from a lab is to go to the new place so they can recreate the recipe. And what's going to end up happening is that you have all the recipe knowers at the different labs around the industry, and they're probably all going to reach AGI at the same time, or very close to each other. And so I think what my guess is the realization a lot of researchers had is there isn't the place that it's going to happen. It's going to happen
all leaking
everywhere.
out. Everybody's going to have it. Might as well get paid the most along the way.
Yeah. So why not get yours? If that money's out there, what are you going to be like a missionary and take less money with weirdly illiquid stock so that you can maybe get AGI 2 weeks before the next lab does? It doesn't really compute. And so I think that more than anything, which is
we need to build a business just for these 100 million employees, whatever they want to read, and then just the advertising budget on that, get in front of the lunatic,
just people paying
just
for
a 10-person email. They're hedge fund newsletters. We'll have just the AI researcher, 20-person.
How much would Zuck pay us? So that we could have ads in front of the 10 most important researchers.
Right, exactly. Just on their minds.
Yeah. So that's all been very funny to watch play out. And then, we'll see how it all happens with Meta, right? They have the teams in place, and I'm interested to see how long it takes for them to redo the Llama training to get to a point where this was all worth. At least they'll get a model that's competitive, because that's the problem. Making money off of it is a whole different story with that company. They're open source. They've never really made a dime off of it. This is going to be a long-term play for Meta to make it work. But in the meantime, all these guys get rich.
So what does this all mean for Llama? Obviously, Llama 4 was sort of a disaster. Do you think Meta sticks with its open source strategy of just making no money and foiling the competition? Or you think now spend all this money and better come up with a proprietary product for itself?
I hope they do. I hope they keep with the open source thing. Because to me, if Zuck's whole play is about fucking over Sam Altman,
just burn the forest down,
that would be the best way to do it, right? And I always thought that was the smartest aspect that he had there in the first place, is look, because he's very jealous, I'm assuming, of Sam. And as he was coming up to being the voice of Silicon Valley in this moment, that he's oh, well, what if we just take the same technology but release it for free? That'll destroy these people. They'll have no business. Which I thought was cool. I actually thought that was an actually badass play. And if he decides to get rid of it because he just wants to make money in some consumer product, I will be really disappointed.
There is a very subtle monetization mechanic on this, which I saw YouTube said that people who dump AI stuff onto YouTube will not be allowed to monetize it. And there's a certain argument that Google and Facebook, they could be the content providers. It's if if there's this AI appealing content, it's like you block everyone else from it, and you are sort of the exclusive content provider. I don't know.
I haven't heard that. That's interesting. I mean, the funny thing with Facebook and AI, or Meta and AI, is that, like when stories would come out that like Llama 4 behemoth is delayed, their stock drops. And I never really understood that because they don't make any money off of it. But there's just this general acceptance on the part of investors that like, well, AI has to matter for everyone. So it's important that you like have a major
and there is
that.
like, if, open source projects, if you're around them, usually, people have figured out how to make money.
Sure, it's a distribution play. Like that's what it is with Google and Chrome and Android. Did I say Chrome? I meant Android. With Google and Android. So yeah, sure. I don't worry too much about like their ability to make money off of it. But in the short term, having this, open source high level model, like we saw DeepSeek really threw the industry into turmoil for at least a little bit. You think Meta could do that at a much larger scale. So it's kind of exciting.
I'm betting on closed source, to be clear.
I mean, that's the smarter bet. But also the two biggest companies that are succeeding on it right now are closed source, right? Anthropic and OpenAI. And then I guess Google as well. So yeah, that's a safe bet.
Well, moving on, outside of open source or closed source, you probably don't want your model becoming Mecha Hitler. So that was the other big story.
Depends your
of
political
the week.
Orientation these days.
That's true. I don't know.
I'd say if it happens, it happens. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we probably don't want the AGI to be Mecha Hitler on this podcast. But yes, we're talking, of course, about Grok 4, XAI's new model that was debuted by Elon Musk earlier this week, which was overshadowed by its Grok chatbot interface on X, just ramping up the racism and politically incorrect speech in all of its replies to 11. So you can't really
literally
talk
being
about
like,
how,
we know what that last name means, just like.
It's so bad.
I couldn't tell if it was real.
Model, right?
Did you see the tweet or like a screenshot of one that was like Grok 4 was getting really explicit about Linda Yaccarino? Did you see that one?
I didn't see that. I saw something about Will Stansel.
Yeah, how did Will Stansel get inserted into that story?
True.
Oh no, Will Stansel is like the lead anecdote to the Journal story about this, which I think is a little ridiculous. Like, no, come on. It's like,
I mean, people are like they're like convincing the model to do this, right? It's like they're doing like thought experiments sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. There's clearly an issue in terms of its like, guidelines and how it's allowed to interact with people. I don't honestly think Grok was giving people specific ideas on how to like attack and rape Will Stansel. And this was like
This is a random lib Twitter account that's too deeply ingrained in our brains.
He also ran for Congress.
Thanks to Elon, I guess.
Can I speak out in defense of Mecha Hitler for 1 second?
Sure, not a take I expected.
I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think XAI deserves a lot of credit for what they've built within the model game. They are a far smaller lab than almost all the other companies. They basically were made up by, Igor Babushkin, who is this ex-DeepMind guy who came in there definitely on the, premise of wanting to build the anti-woke OpenAI, the anti-woke, woke ChatGPT, and they fucking did it. Like Grok 3 is a really good model. It like is absolutely competitive with all the other big models. They built this giant database in Nashville, Colossus. I don't know yet how good Grok 4 is, but like according to the benchmarks, which can be gamed, so you don't want to give too much credit to it. And as we saw with Llama 4, you can do well in the benchmarks and actually have a completely useless model. But like I look at Microsoft and what they tried to do with Mustafa in hiring a top tier researcher. They had tons of resources. They have not put out a large model. You look at Meta, they've completely fucked up their whole thing. Grok is out there putting out models that seem to be fairly competitive, if not better than the rest that's out there. So like, I can't believe I'm defending Elon in all of this, but like maybe you get a little Mecha Hitler on the way to doing it.
It's like if it's smart enough, who cares what it's
I mean, maybe
beliefs.
the smart. Yeah, it's like, we all have friends like that sometimes they're really smart, but sometimes they, advocate Mecha Hitler ideology. I just think,
aren't you about your takes are all over the place.
No. I mean, I'm obviously joking about Mecha Hitler, but genuinely speaking, like I think like Maddie, you said like it overshadowed like the release of Grok 4, which is maybe true because Mecha Hitler was very funny, maybe scary if you're Will Stansel.
It also inadvertently led to Linda Yaccarino stepping down, I think, in some big part. So
we don't know.
Maybe.
We don't know. I haven't read a good story about it yet.
You could say that. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
it could have.
Question.
It could have. I don't know. I don't even want to come off as contrarian here. I just think like what XAI is doing is impressive. Like in the world where like most labs do not put out very good models, like they consistently, or at least twice in a row, put out something that seemed to matter.
I mean, somebody was commenting that, XAI, like their presentation was like the stuff of engineers. It just feels like a company that's all engineers, no philosopher kings. And I would prefer one of the philosopher king companies win, or XAI get some scruples. I mean, what is freedom in the context of a model? You know what I mean? The model has like a point of view. You know what I mean? There isn't this sort of, no matter, they're going to direct it towards one thing or away from another.
I'm interested in seeing how it actually is implemented and used by people, because if it's like actually impressive, people shouldn't just discount all of that because it seemed to have some post-training issues.
Right. I mean, I don't think they will. I mean, first of all, Grok has this huge advantage of being in front of everybody on X. So if they have something good, it's got the users in a way that people like Anthropic don't.
Yeah.
They also have a great base of text-based training data with all of this, real human text data.
Well, that's clearly where the Nazi shit came from.
I will do the classic reporter thing, which is I wrote in a story, I forget if it was my bear case in OpenAI or what, but I've been pretty bullish on Grok for a while, despite being somewhat of an Elon Tesla.
I didn't know that. What's your argument for that? What was?
Well, just like talking to investors that they really thought like Grok was going to catch up, and that like the internal signs were that they had really good people, and that just investors were taking it very seriously in a way that they still had to prove to the public. I mean, it's raised a ton of money, and I don't think the people making those investments are idiots. I think they thought Elon will catch up, and it seems like he has.
Well, it's always unclear with the Elon investments, right? Like to a degree, it always feels like it's a little bit of like, well, if we give Elon money for this maybe idiotic project, we'll get access to SpaceX.
But Grok was so much, the XAI stuff and Twitter, there's a lot of money to do it all. So I think those started to need to pay off. Those were the ones, I think, like boring companies, some of those you're like, oh, okay, well, we'll throw them a bone, hope some of the other ones work out. But like, I think XAI was one of the ones that needed to work out. It'll be interesting what financial machinations he pulls between Tesla and XAI. I think he already said that Tesla would soon start having Grok in the cars. So I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of self-dealing between these companies.
Well, yeah, that's kind of his thing,
which the investors want. It's like, how do we make sure they all make money? Like,
well, basically, it's like, yeah. If you were an X, holder and you ended up with XAI, that's a little bit better. But yeah, if you can somehow spin this off into Tesla stock or even better, SpaceX stock, that would be nice.
Well, that's one of the core reporting questions I think we didn't really ever answer was like, did X shareholders or XAI shareholders get a better deal in that merger? And I think the answer was like, on metrics at the time, you would have said, obviously, X shareholders. But based on what you just said and what a lot of people think, like XAI has this unlimited valuation potential. So you're getting a good deal getting access to XAI.
That said, they don't really make all that much money right now.
Right. It's all just hype. I mean, it's like, but with Elon, what is making money? It's like, it's a valuation thing.
So while we're talking about unlimited valuation for XAI, I guess you guys have been spending a lot of time thinking about, and I was talking to our colleague Jonathan Weber about this. Are we in a bubble? Why now do you think we potentially are in a bubble? Stocks have been going up for some time. Like what's particularly bubble-like about what's happening now?
I think the biggest thing really was just the RAMP report that the RAMP's research data put out, which is, of course, it's a smaller sample size of people, using RAMP and what their customers are spending money on. But I think there was a noticeable kind of peak hit in the last month around tool adoption. And while it's not a bubble, I would say, on AI, it could be a bubble on how much people are willing to pay for AI tools, especially at the enterprise level. So while that may not hurt AI overall in the long run, all of these companies that are building the next big tool for enterprise AI may have been charging a bit too much. And I mean, we saw that, with cursor prices going way up and people complaining and getting subsequently reversed. Like, it could be just a point where not everyone is willing to pay for infinite AI anymore. If they think it'll get them ahead, they may want to focus on cost at this point.
Well, let me take a stab at this. I mean, first of all, Newcomer is not declaring it's a bubble. I think we're pointing out that there are an impressionistic take that there are some things that might raise bubble questions. One is this survey from Ramp showing that sort of spending on new AI apps is going down, right? The number of apps. I'm also interested in sort of CoreWeave and the infrastructure companies and the heavy valuations that those companies have received. They've seen a lot of valuation growth, and now people are starting to ask questions about how they account for things. So yeah, I think there's the sort of highly valued infrastructure players racing into AI. There's this sort of Ramp data turn. So I think there are questions about things. I think the key point here, though, is like you can have like sort of a correction in one sector, but not necessarily in AI. Like I think the mood could turn against infrastructure plays, like .com era. There was this huge telecom build out that was sort of correct, but they did it way too fast and it wasn't that valuable. And so I think there are going to be definitely nobody contests that there will be bubbles within AI where some pieces of the stack are not that valuable, but need to exist. People spend a lot of money to build them. And then it turns out they don't get to retain a lot of the actual profits from AI. So it could be foundation model companies, it could be infrastructure companies, but certainly I think there are pieces of this where a lot of money will be spent and not a lot of money will be sort of retained by that category. And we don't know how that's going to play out, but it's been to the benefit of everybody who wants to build an AI.
I mean, we've also kind of seen this with sort of the initial chatbot wave, right? Like there was a period of time where there were all these startups coming out with chatbots, which ultimately kind of just absorbed into a few players, and that wasn't actually monetizable. And that wasn't the end of chatbots. That just meant that frame of how to make money off of AI with chatbots wasn't going to be the way that everything became as an individual company or application. It had to be blended into something like an OpenAI, which could provide all of these other services for you too. So I think there certainly will be winners. It just may not be so stratified across all these different products.
It's also, if you buy the argument that a lot of the bulls have on AI, that this is like a multi-year, transformational cycle, we're going to have dips in it.
Right.
It's just
That's
just
why
the
we
nature
can
of it.
be very bullish on AI while saying, seems like maybe a bubble right now.
Yeah. I'm not even sure where I fall in it necessarily, but I just don't think we're going to see like the peak bubble now. Like, I think there's going to be, it could be a couple years down the line where we see like, oh, in fact, this did not turn out to be as lucrative as a lot of the people thought it was going to be, and the investments were well ahead of their skis. I'm just not ready to call it now. I just haven't seen enough indication.
What's the catalyst? We're over extrapolating from one Ramp survey. Otherwise, I mean, yeah.
Well, there were things that I think caused people to take notice, like, Microsoft pulling out and kind of rejiggering some of its leases on data centers, which people for a time were deciding that meant that they no longer wanted to build data centers, which just isn't true. I mean, that seemed very specific to Microsoft and its OpenAI relationship. But people look at those sort of things, and private equity companies that own a lot of the data center companies maybe changing their leases. So this has been going on for some time, but I just don't think, like you're saying, Eric, I just don't think we would have seen it now. It felt very out of the blue.
Here's what's sort of confusing about this situation. Okay, if NVIDIA produces high quality AI chips at a faster pace, like they say they're going to, if they're going to refresh these chips, will that be a catalyst to a bubble bursting, or will that be good for AI, right? In some ways, if they update their chips more often, the infrastructure companies, which have spent a lot of money on chips, may be miscalculating how valuable that investment is and may need to spend a lot of money to move on to the next one. So obviously, improving technology will be good for what consumers experience in terms of AI, but it could disrupt some of the infrastructure providers. So these are really sort of complicated questions in terms of which companies get hit and which companies do really well.
Yeah, totally. And I think you could see AI being as transformative as a lot of the bulls expect it to be, and NVIDIA takes a hit in a different way because there's more competition, or because there doesn't need to be, the next generation of chips being as expensive as they are. Or you have real breakthroughs in terms of efficiency that makes it a better product for people, more affordable for businesses. But someone like NVIDIA gets its valuation just kind of decimated. I'm not predicting that, but I'm saying both can be true.
I mean, I'm very bullish still on what's to be built in AI in a lot of these startups, what we're hearing from people. Like, to me, I think there's, It remains my point of view that there's a lot of capability available from the existing models that people have not figured out how to turn into products, and people are going to turn those into products, and those products will make money. What is not clear to me is if the foundation models get to keep return all the money they spent to build up that capability, and whether the infrastructure companies are properly valued based on everything they've contributed to creating all that value.
Right. And then, on the enterprise side of things, like I still think we're not at a point where businesses are seeing a great amount of benefit from this technology.
That's another fair indicator.
They just haven't figured it out yet. Like I did this panel a month or so ago with like all these chief data officers at fairly, old line companies, like Ford Credit Union or Danone, like the yogurt company. And they have
a real
data
salt
officer.
of the earth business guy now.
Well, I mean, I was invited to do it. I didn't prior to this have a deep relationship with the yogurt industry, but like, they all have chief data officers. They all want to figure this thing out, but none of them, as I could tell, had really gotten like, oh, we've implemented it in this way, and now we've transformed our business across the company to use this. So they all want to do it. They don't really know how to.
And I think the agent buzzword, as exciting of an idea as it is, I think we are far away from regular enterprises really implementing agents as sort of employee equivalents that are running around, spending budget, making decisions. And so that conversation to me is sort of a signal of hype getting out of control.
Yeah, as a daughter of a lawyer who works in this kind of space, I can just report back that a lot of these companies are a little bit risk averse in letting agents run rampant, even if they are in theory very excited about this. So I do think it's going to be kind of a multi-year adoption curve on this one, but it could mean that the hype right now is a little bit too much.
So far as I can tell, the biggest adopters of this stuff is like the makers of the technology themselves, who seem to be all about laying people off in order to like take advantage of the efficiency. Like Microsoft just laid off like another several thousand people, and it really seems
were
like
they middle managers, or which tier were they? Do you know?
They had a middle manager layoff a couple of months ago, but this one was mostly in the sales org.
Do you know what percent? Because I one of my the other version of the Newcomer Podcast is the Cerebral Valley Podcast, which we've been recording with Max and James, and in that we have these predictions, and I think one of mine is that a Fortune 500 will attribute layoffs to AI. So I'm unfortunately for workers rooting, I think, for a mass AI attributed layoff in terms of my prediction becoming true. just for
the Kelsey bet.
Just so I can say I was right,
Yeah. Microsoft was not explicit about it at all, but there were some interesting pieces that came out afterwards that like in the meeting after they laid off all their, 50% of the sales team in certain departments, the head of the unit, the CVP was like, by the way, you guys should really start using AI more. It can make your life a lot better. And so there, we're not quite like the quiet part out loud, but it seems like we're, at least with those companies, like leaning towards that. They want to set an example. Here's how you lay people off when you use our products.
Just mood check before we move on to the next subject. Are you bullish or bearish on AI over the next 6 months?
6 months? I think there's it's going to continue to go up. There's no indication that things are going off a cliff.
All right. Same.
Yeah.
We're all bullish in 6 months, but maybe that means we're all blind. We're all bought into the hype, So the air comes out at some point.
You got to do better than the ramp data for me to just decide to be bearish, though.
I agree. That's why this is an impressionistic, certain signals to pay attention to. We're not saying this thing is a bubble. All right. The last topic, an exciting one, spicy, complaining about tweets. Tom, you're all fired up about this. Somehow you're okay with Mecha Hitler, but you can't stomach Sequoia's Shaun Maguire.
I can't deal with Sequoia Hitler.
His earnest political views.
Shaun Maguire is a guy I don't know personally. I've met many Sequoia partners. I've gone to the Sequoia spring mixers and fall mixers, and there's quite a lot of people there that I like. I don't think Shaun Maguire is... Oh, sorry. Let me before we get into that. He has been going off on Twitter for about 2 years almost, mostly with his hardline right-wing pro-Israel politics. He likes to make people mad. This is very exciting to him. he really got into hot water, so to speak, over the 4th of July weekend, when he, after the story in the New York Times about Zohran Mamdani maybe being misleading on his Columbia application, Shaun goes out there and says, Mamdani is a liar because he's an Islamist, and this is culturally baked into what Islamists do. And then people got mad because it really sounded like he was saying all Muslims are liars, culturally speaking. And then he goes out and says, that's not true. I wasn't talking about all Islamists or all Muslims, talking about Islamists. And then that became a whole conversation about what it means to be and whether or not Shaun is a racist. And I don't really know.
And Bill Ackman and people have rallied around Shaun
Rallied to his defense. I saw Josh Wolf also rallying to his defense too.
God, Josh Wolf.
There was a petition of people condemning Shaun. There was a counter petition of people supporting Shaun with signatures from all walks of this world.
We're not canceling Shaun Maguire. That is we're being very clear. And I think you do a good job of pointing this out, Tom. But the one thing everybody in Silicon Valley can agree on is no more cancellations. And we're sticking to that armistice. We're not trying, nobody on this podcast is trying to cancel Shaun Maguire.
Yeah, the idea of someone losing their job because of their opinions, in general, I'm generally against it. I think that's not a great thing for societies to have happen. I wouldn't advocate for it. I don't think before I get into my personal opinion, I listened to a podcast interview Shaun Maguire did with Jack Altman, second time he's come up on this episode, in which he talked about his decision to kind of come out as an opinion haver and talk about all of his right-wing politics. And he was saying after October 7th, and Shaun was pulling from his history. I think he worked for the DOD. He understands information warfare and the way that misinformation can be spread online. It was extremely important for him to start talking about his politics. And he even said on this podcast, on that episode, I'd be willing to die for the things that I believe. And I don't advocate for that at all. That would be awful. I don't really think the things that Shaun is saying are necessary to say. I don't really think, and he has a pretty large platform. He has 250,000 followers. He really thinks that he is putting important stuff into the discourse based on that podcast and the fact that he keeps going on about this stuff. And this is very common now within Silicon Valley. It's very common. There are certain VCs that have decided that their platform and their takes are so important that they want to build a whole media empire around it. And we've got, the best version of that is the All In guys who have built an actually successful show with their takes on things. Mike Solana, who I also don't know, he's not really an investor, but he's he's obviously in the VC world.
He's Founders Fund CMO.
Yeah, but he's not a VC, but whatever. He's in that world. He built Pirate Wires, which is actually an interesting publication. And I totally give him credit for all of that.
You're basically saying, Shaun, if you're going to make us listen to you constantly, you need to be a little more creative. It can't just be
have something interesting to say.
Yes.
Have something more interesting to say than just what I find to be
racially tinged things that get everybody in a fury. It's sort of like the lowest common denominator way to get people to
right. It's a hack. It's a hack to get people to think that you're interesting because you're saying stuff that's kind of pushing the envelope in a racial way, or whatever way, in a culturally bigoted way. And I just think if it's that important to you, Shaun, that you really want to be flooding those of us who want to maybe see your takes on other things, within the tech world. Talk about your politics, start up a Substack. Let's just see how interesting your views really are. Build up a little media empire around you and see if people actually care.
Attention because he believes in all sorts of conspiracies too. He's
yeah, he does have his election denier stuff.
I mean, I guess I could just be furthering your take, Tom, with this. First of all, clearly it hasn't affected Sequoia's brand standing at all. So anyone who's concerned about cancellation, you don't think so?
I think it hurts the brand a little bit, or it's looms so large in terms of what Sequoia's brand is. I think of Sequoia, again, I don't want to go after Shaun or have them tell him to stop, but I do think just from a brand perspective, it's one of the loudest parts of their brand right now.
But I think they're still really regarded as...
Yeah,
I think they're still. I think the results is overwhelmingly supersedes this. I really don't think it's hurt at all. And I think if you're kind of in the ecosystem, especially where maybe you hold some of these views too, or you're a little bit enjoying the kind of vocal trolley posture, which I will say is kind of a case for a lot of people in certain sectors and different industries. Like, it could be a value add for you. You could be like signaling like, hey, we don't care what people think. We just want the returns. And so I don't think it hurts them really at all. And so I don't see, I mean, I don't
let me make a couple quick points. I mean, one, being close to Elon and having somebody in this sort of conservative troll world gets you a certain contingent of people. And so if Sequoia can get away with, okay, we're the normie guys, but we also are friendly with Elon world, there's a financial play there. And I think that's part of what's gone on. The other thing I just want to say on this conversation is that, like, kudos to Amjad, the CEO of Replit. I'll put it that way. I mean, he's been very bold in voicing unpopular opinions. And I think Shaun represents himself as like articulating this sort of like, I don't know, out of consensus point of view.
Well, but Amjad is an interesting case here because, he went on Joe Rogan a couple of weeks ago, talked about all kinds of things. But, within that, he talked about, his being of Palestinian descent and he's Jordanian. And he was like, yeah, it's not easy being, one of the few people in Silicon Valley willing to speak out against Israel and for the Palestinian
Paul
cause.
Graham, I think.
Yeah, right. Paul Graham's an interesting case in all of that, but it feels more personal with Amjad. And, like he's gotten into it a little bit with Shaun on X, and Shaun, completely took out of context something that Amjad had said and cut off the date in like a Washington Post article so that he could claim that what he had said on Rogan was inaccurate. And, that's standard trollish behavior on Shaun's part. Like he was trying to get a rise out of people. I don't even think Amjad is that, honestly, like, the politics that he was describing on Rogan doesn't even really conform with like the most leftist stuff. He was talking about two-state solutions. He was, like, I care a lot about what happens to the Israeli people. I mean, that kind of stuff would not actually, endear you too much to the left.
Sure, but the stuff you're hearing on tech Twitter right now is like, just like, let's send every weapon we have over to Israel and like let the chips fall where they may.
Sure, Joe Lonsdale is probably the extreme version of that. And like, I don't know, I'd be interested in your take, Eric, but like Sequoia, with Doug Leone as the head of the firm, also like fairly well-known conservative. Like as a firm, they certainly, if you want to look at the personalities.
They had Doug Leone and they had Mike Moritz, both really strong investors, opposite sides of the political spectrum. Clearly, Doug Leone won. I mean, Moritz isn't even part of the firm anymore. And it seems like that ideology has won. I mean, Roelof doesn't talk about his politics a ton, but my sense is he's on the more conservative side of things. And so, yeah, I don't see who the beacon of liberal or left-wing thought of, at least publicly, as Sequoia is right now.
And do you think Doug being there gives Shaun a lot more cover to be able to say the stuff that he does?
I mean, my first piece for the newsletter was about, him being a Trump watching conservative. It was about China and about how the center could not hold with Sequoia having China while having a anti-China sort of. Anyway, I was right. China spun out. But anyway, that was my first piece. And it talked about how Doug Leone was a big Trumper. And so, yeah, I mean, Doug's not in charge anymore, but he's still around the firm. And I think that the fact that if Shaun was so out of step with the rest of Sequoia, it wouldn't last.
Yeah, but he also kind of wants to be maybe fired a little bit. Like, I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, on that podcast, he talked about the fact that, he's independently wealthy now because he had sold a company earlier. So he has a lot of money. So he's able to, take these risks with his opinions. And then, he changed his Twitter bio or his X bio for a bit to say like Sequoia partner in parentheses for now. Like he's certainly baiting people to, and, he talked about how the petition, was another example of cancel culture. And these people love to be, victims before the fact. So yeah, I don't know if like, I don't even talk to Shaun for this. I
just don't know why it
would play into his martyr,
this Islamist
narrative,
Muslim distinction. Like why say something that's so easily misinterpreted, I guess is my issue here.
Because he's a troll.
Right. Yeah. And I hate that kind of communication. I just I at my core want to speak sort of earnestly and openly and say, be heard as I'm what I'm intending to say, and I feel like he's trying to hack engagement, and that is what I object to.
Right. No, and that was sort of the point of my column is I don't even really deal with the specifics of what he's saying and interrogating the logic. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But like, he is kind of claiming that he is on this holy war to put his opinions out there because it's extremely necessary. And in fact, I don't think these opinions are that surprising. I don't think they're all that necessary. And he's hacking the system anyway to get them out there. Like, he's not really saying...
And he's friends with the guy who runs the platform, the guy who's shifting his own AI to bring this full circle to sound more like him. It's like, oh, I could be one of the voices that says the things that Elon wants me to say,
Yeah, there are certain people, there are certain people who I think have been elevated by the Elon era Twitter and the For You page and the algorithm. And it's like Shaun Maguire is one of them. So also is the die workwear guy. But different sides of the political.
I mean, one of the most
spectrum.
iconic things that has been said on this podcast is Ben Smith saying we're all in the courts of billionaires. And I think that theme has continued to play out. And yeah, Shaun Maguire's in the court of Elon Musk.
Right. And benefited from it in lots of ways, financially, and also like in this little mini unimpressive media thing that he's put together.
But we are not canceling you, Shaun. Keep tweeting. Godspeed. Just make them less hate, more thought.
Well, he's not hateful, only towards Islamofascists or Islamists. Those who can hate.
Which it is offensive. It is offensive to say that Mamdani is an Islamist. Like there's nothing. It's like he's a normal mayoral candidate. Like, I feel like we can't let that part of it slip by. Like, it's just like
at that point, like, it is just blatantly false. Also, it's just I don't want to let that slide.
Have you done the research though, Madeline? Have you done the research?
I'm familiar with who his father is as a professor at Columbia. I will just say I don't think that Zohran Mamdani is an Islamist, and that there's no evidence to that to be supported, and to say that is inherently inflammatory.
Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, as the non-New Yorker, as the non-New Yorker on this podcast, he didn't even really run on like an identitarian campaign, right?
That's all the right-wing effort now is to basically say, you were misled, like this happy-go-lucky campaign that you saw, that's not who he really is.
It's all bullshit. I'm sorry. He ran a campaign on affordability, but anyway.
I feel like the substance of it matters, not just the optics. Anyway, that's our episode. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. See you next week with Shaun Maguire co-hosting. And
well, I'm sure if you put that out into the world, there's some percentage chance.
Is Grok still too woke? Next week.
All right, see ya.
Bye.